Welcome. I can't really see you, but when I'm in a foreign country, I prefer to be a moving target. So if you want to do a denial of speech, you can throw things at me if I go on too long. I thought this morning was quite strange. Here we are at the beginning of 2016, and we were having a debate on stage about whether a password of 123456 or 123456 is, really the thing we should be worrying about from cyber security. And I did think it led me into quite nicely what I want to focus my energy on in the next 15 or 20 minutes. If we think we have security challenges today, then I think we are in for a shock in a very short future. If you just look back to the humble PC, it was popularized in the late 70s, early 80s. It has gone through from that beautiful thing on the left, the IBM PC, to many of the devices that are sitting on your laps. There's been a fundamental shift in terms of cost, performance, capability, well beyond the dreams of most people. And as also sitting on your laps, it's spawned many, many variations, from the laptops to the notebooks to the tablets and everything else. And what they fundamentally do today, some 35 years later, is very different to what was envisaged when some of us old people began to install these in corporations. The mobile phone has gone from very similar humble beginnings, from the first one invented by Motorola to the beautiful devices that you're all looking at now, because I can see your faces reflected in the mirror. And it's quite interesting. We started off by creating a phone to make telephone calls to a device that actually is not frequently used for making telephone calls. It's everything else. It's the social side, it's the mobile networking, it's internet, it's applications. And it is absolutely right, I think, to credit Apple with fundamentally changing the world when they invented the first iPhone in 2007. It put power into people's hands and has spawned many, many technology businesses and challenges. But underpinning all of this is telecommunications, from the ridiculous 2 tin cans as we used as kids to global networks spanning the world, where there are a few parts in the world where you cannot get some level of telecommunications. And it has gone from the single conversation to billions of concurrent conversations. I, like many of you in this room, spend our lives traveling the world, and we can always speak to our friends and families and loved ones, and if we have to, business, any time of the day, any part of the world. But as the technology has grown in PCs, it's grown in laptops, it's grown in tablets, it's grown in telecommunications. These things have moved in tandem, and I think they have moved at a pace that has surprised us from a security perspective. But it's also spawned hundreds of different businesses. If you take Uber, the world's largest taxi firm without any taxis, Airbnb, the world's largest hotel without any hotels, Alibaba, the world's largest online retailer without any stores or any products, the debate about cloud computing, the debate in terms of big data. All of these have come because we have fundamentally changed the technology, we have fundamentally underpinned it with large-scale broadband networks, and now we talk about there's an app for that, and people are now shifting to an API for that. We can connect almost anything to anything in the world. So we talk of startups growing because they can on any beach in any country. But let's talk about security. We've talked about this technological revolution, which we're all benefiting from. But if you look at the first virus, the first big one, Al-Clona, 1982, it followed a few years after the invention of the technology, but wasn't particularly mainstream. You could probably all quote me other more important viruses since then, whether you're talking of Blaster or Sasa. But if you look at statistics of last year, 1 million new malwares invented every single day. Do you think when someone designed that PC or designed that mobile phone, they were thinking 35 years later we would have 1 million new ways to cause us harm invented in a day. And it is hard for us, if we were honest with ourselves, to put our hand on our heart and say that our approach to security has kept up with the technology that we have invented and we have deployed and continue to deploy. The phone is the same. There's a big debate in terms of I download an application as a torch, and then it asks me for all of my contacts and all of my emails and all of my SMSs, just because I want to turn the light on. But look at the data losses on the right-hand side of this chart. It's as if data loss has become the norm. It's almost as if, well, you're not doing a bad enough job if you don't have a serious data loss. And how has this changed the world? I'm not sure you can get much bigger data losses. But has it fundamentally changed the way we think about technology from a security and privacy perspective? We can have arguments about data localization if we wish. We can have arguments about Safe Harbor 2 and the Microsoft case with the Justice Department. All very, very important. But here we are, masses of data going to places it should never go. So what can we learn about technology and security? Well, first of all, whatever we invent, we know the security problems are going to occur after we've invented the technology. And since the PC was invented some 35, 40 years later, we still can't secure it. I've stood in audiences like this around the world and asked you to advise me, if I buy a PC today, how would I secure it? And the most common answer is never turn it on. I don't think that is a sign of success for our industry. Wherever there is technology, there is going to be threat, and that is never, ever going to change. And this is not because we haven't put a tremendous amount of effort in from a security perspective. We have. You just need to look at the version numbers of operating systems and browsers and applications. The reality is what we create and what we build together, it is almost impossible to put your hand on your heart and you can secure it. And that's today. So the reality is, welcome to our new world. A world which is globally interconnected, globally interdependent, and that's not just the technology, that's the security. Your home, your bank, your retail can be wherever it is. And again, when we designed and we first launched some of this technology, did we think this is the way we would shape the world? I doubt it very much. Let's go to the new world. My worry about us in security is we try and drive the car by looking in the rear-view mirror. We try and fix the problems of 5 years ago and 10 years ago and 15 years ago. We don't look forward and say, what problems are we going to get in 5 years or 6 years or 7 years? And here's a glimpse into the future. Smart city. Lots of governments are now putting smart cities in. Smart grids, safe city. The whole issue in terms of how you manage energy and reduce your carbon footprint. The whole issue in terms of smart business, lots of sensors, remote control of the air conditioning, the security, the windows, turning the heating on and off, controlling vending, making sure all the fire alarms are working. Your home is becoming smart. Look at the Nest things that you can buy to turn your heating up or down, the way you can control your windows and your security. You look at the smart grids. Governments are putting smart grids in because of the certainty of power. Can I reduce the power consumption by giving you more information by how much you're using? The whole issue of industrialized IoT or industrial control systems, and we've seen plenty in the media about the way that control systems are fair game in the eyes of some hackers. And supporting all of that is smart network. 4G, 5G network, everything is virtualized, all the functions are virtualized, everything has gone into a different place where the network is self-defined and it's self-organizing. And I just ask us all one question. Do we believe we can secure technology that we don't understand? Is it possible for everyone to understand containerization and self-organized networks? Is it possible for everyone to understand every piece of encryption, every certification? Because this, in its entirety, is coming every day. But people in this room, boards will look to many of us to say, so, is it safe? What do you say? Because the truth is, well, maybe, maybe not. So the new world is going to be very, very different from where we are now. And it is a complex system that we're going to have to adapt our thinking of security away from, should my password be 123456? Should I store data locally? We have to begin to step up to the plate in terms of thinking exactly, how am I going to protect a world which I cannot see and I cannot control? We as a supplier, a vendor, for example, 70% of what goes in our equipment comes from vendors around the world. Only 30% is made by us. Those suppliers we buy off, they will have their own global supply chain bouncing backwards and forwards. And therefore, when people say, we must secure the supply chain, great, how? How will we do it? How will you protect your sensors in the homes for telemedicine if you don't know the supply chain, you don't know the handshakes, you don't know the privacy by design and the security by design issues? And the reality is, I think we need to have a different kind of conversation. Microsoft have just talked about the complexities of jurisdictions and the way the law conflicts with each other, the whole safe harbor, the whole justice issue. Unless we can get governments to work together, that is not going to change in the foreseeable future. And I would ask you to put your hand up if you think we're ever going to get governments to agree about security and privacy and standards in the next 5 years. Do you think it's really possible for governments to agree how all of this is going to work in a globally interconnected world? Put your hand up if you think that's going to happen. No, I don't think so either. And it's right that governments talk, but the issue is, are we going to get answers? And in the meantime, will you stop installing technology? No. Will your customers keep demanding more from you? Yes. And therefore, you are going to have to get used to working with these natural conflicts that is caused by an analog legal system in a digital world. Lots of people talk to me about technical standards. There are thousands of technical standards. But the problem with standards is they're not standard. Everyone wants to do something different. But there will never be one standard for security. There will never be one standard for privacy because the industries are different. And therefore, our thinking on standards needs to focus on where our greatest risk is. Not going through standards for the basis that if I get this standard, you're okay. And if you don't get this standard, you're not okay. And I think governments themselves are going to have to rethink how they set policy. How do they balance the debate between where data is stored, national security, personal privacy, with inward investment, with job creation, with the promotion of homegrown industries? I see nothing wrong with a country promoting its homegrown industries, and so they should. That's what citizens expect their governments to do. And therefore, many of these debates where we're putting in the very hard camp, like where is data stored, we should just translate that into a commercial issue. If somebody wants data stored locally, so be it. I don't need to bid for that work if I think it's too expensive, but we shouldn't burn lots of brain power on things that actually are quite hard to change going forward. So the next 5 years, we'll see everything mobile, everything connected, everything virtualized. This is the new world. Call it what you want. In Davos last week, they were calling it Industry 4.0. The reality is this world is changing around us, and we're still talking about passwords. Take this simple chart. Over 1 billion vehicles, everyone's working on smart cars, police brake at the traffic light, but that takes a low latency network if you're relying on network. Lots of wearables. I've seen people wearing wearables, but let's see that we can protect the data, because if your health is dependent on a diabetes jab at a certain time, you don't want that data being corrupted. To smart homes, going into a super smartphone, if you like, talking to a whole host of cloud infrastructures, which will be in anywhere in the world, being covered by any legal jurisdiction, talking to applications that you don't even know who the supplier is. You have no idea what their privacy requirements are, no idea of their security credentials. That is the world. That is the world. And I've been started off by talking about the invention of the PC some 35, 40 years ago. This is 5 to 7 years away. So we better pull our fingers out and start looking forward and not looking backwards. So let me summarize, and then I will get off. The technology is not going to wait for any government, any law, any person, or any legal challenge. It will continue to grow and adapt. Governments will continue to buy the technology they're worried about, as will consumers and businesses. Nothing has slowed up because we haven't cracked security. Innovation is way beyond what we thought it would be. Not because we're foolish people, because I don't think you can predict innovation that far forward. But as you can see, the gap we have come in the last 35 years, it's accelerating. Because we're building innovation on innovation on innovation. Security challenges will always follow. And if we don't start thinking of the security challenges in an IoT 5G-based world, then we'll still be having the conversation about the password, because it's something that we understand. It's unlikely you will find any company or any individual that will be able to give you all of the technical requirements and security issues for every piece of technology. You only need to go and look at the stands out in the foyer. Lots of spot solutions, and I'm sure they are brilliant products. But don't forget, many of those products are because of the failure of the base technology not having the right security. That isn't going to get easier over the next 5 years. Governments are going to need to come to terms in terms of what is their policy. Every conference I go to, the ministers come on, they say the same thing. Collaboration, promote, etc., protect critical infrastructure, all that is very, very valid. But we're in a global interconnected world, and therefore their view is not the sole view in terms of how the world will last change. And finally, for people like me, vendors like me, we're going to have to be more transparent. If you ask the vendor, please tell me about security, and he says, no, I'm not going to tell you, should you trust him? No. Every vendor should be able to declare every piece of their technology, their R&D, their manufacturing, their HR, their legal, their sales processes, their underlying technology to you as customers. They should be able to demonstrate everything they do from a privacy and a security by design, development, and deployment. And if they cannot do that, my recommendation is don't use them. Because they're meant to be the experts. These are the people who are designing the damn technology that we are trying to secure. And if they're not prepared to pass that information on to you openly and freely, then in essence one would question their true motives. So I don't stand here being demoralized by the future. I stand here being incredibly excited by the future. Do I stand here thinking that we will solve every security problem? No. But I do think if we started looking forward rather than trying to drive the car by looking in the rearview mirror, I think we could make significantly more progress from a security perspective. And my mission in my company is quite simple. We want people to buy more technology, because technology has fundamentally changed lives for the better, and I think it's part of our duty to make sure that continues. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup, John Suffolk de Huawei.